Awesome. So cool. So Elizabeth, thanks for having me here today, and thanks for
Absolutely.
being on the show today.
Yeah.
So we're sitting here in Music Box Films, walking around. It's awesome to see kind of all I call it nostalgia too, right?
Basically, yeah.
So we're next to the theater. We're in a cool part of town. And then on top of that, there's posters kind of going around everywhere as
Yeah.
you walk around, which makes for a fun work environment. Thanks for the hat.
You're welcome.
I thought we might start there,
Yeah.
a little bit about this particular film.
Yeah, this is EFIS. So we released the film March 7th. Started in New York, expanded further a couple weeks later, opening in Chicago. It's a baseball film. EFIS is the name of a rare like trick pitch where it's I think it's delivered. I'm no sports expert, but I am,
Me neither.
I am the movie EFIS expert. But it's a trick pitch that is delivered like a fastball, but it's actually very slow. It's high arching, and the batter will swing too early. So it's a little bit of a metaphor within, it plays within the film. It's an art film, but it's a hangout film about an amateur, like a rec league, a bunch of dudes playing for the love of the sport. But it's connecting with a lot of people, especially regionally. So I think it hasn't played at the Music Box yet, but it should open. I think it's going to open really well. It's the screening with the director Carson Lund is already sold out. That's 700 seats. So yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
That is awesome.
Yeah.
Now, but I want to get into the business of Music Box Films,
Sure.
But of course, there's kind of also next door to us, the iconic Music Box Theater.
Absolutely.
Was that always been a part of the process, and your films doing kind of debuts and openings in the theater? Is it kind of a select few, or?
For sure. Well, it's the foundation of our company, Music Box Films, derives from Music Box Theater. The theater was purchased by the owner, and we've renovated slightly. We did a renovation this year, but we've really tried to stay true to the core of what people love about that art theater. And in 2008, we decided that there were a lot of art films that maybe weren't getting distribution or weren't playing everywhere, and we wanted to take the core of what the theater does in terms of playing, international films and independent, like American indies and art house films, and try to distribute those at a larger scale. And so in 2008, Music Box Films was started. We acquire a lot of indies out of major film festivals: Sundance, Toronto International, Cannes Film Festival, Venice, Berlin. So a lot of the major film festivals that everyone hears about and reads reviews of and sees, the celebrities showing up in gondolas in Venice or whatever it may be, right? So we'll acquire films from those film festivals that don't have distribution, and then release them domestically.
Awesome. So I would love to know, so let's dive a little bit into the kind of the business side of Music Box Films. What does that look like? So are you discovering, because I kind of look at it as a curation and a distribution,
Absolutely.
kind of both those things. And we also have Doppelganger as well, which I would classify as being more of kind of the horror or that type of...
Yeah, definitely a genre label. And that was started, years after Music Box Films was already established. But so like, I guess day to day, or rather just when we are acquiring films, or like the business model at its core is acquiring films that we want to curate, quality international films. We do a lot of French films, have a large Francophile audience, but we also do American indies. EFIS is an American indie film, although it premiered at Cannes Film Festival. It's still an American indie, and we do curate. It's trying to find films that we feel fit our brand, but also have an overlap with what we find would be successful in a quality film that we want to bring to the U.S. audience.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'd love to know a little bit about that process, and I understand that might not be part of your area within Music Box,
Sure.
but how are you finding a new film? Is someone knocking on your door? Are you getting tapes dropped off here? Please find me. And
I mean, I would love tapes to be dropped off. That would be really cool. I would.
I said tapes.
I know. I was
is
like,
that even a thing anymore?
okay, I have to like find a VHS player somewhere. But no, I mean, we do get a lot of cold emails, and generally, we're a very small company. We have we all work very closely together, our team. But we have an acquisitions director, for instance, who generally attends most of these film festivals and is just constantly scouting films.
Okay.
We generally will acquire out of film festivals because they have reviews have broken. We know it's a quality film. There's already some word of mouth support, critical support, and there's just a solid foundation that a small distributor can't. We don't have the budget, the finances, the bandwidth to start from nothing, from scratch, and elevate a film that way. So if we can acquire a film that has a solid foundation from the festival run, that gives it legs, so that we can assemble wings or whatever we need to do and have it fly through theatrical and through the life of the film. So we have an acquisitions director. We also have an acquisitions team. My position is I'm the director of marketing publicity for Music Box Films. However, I'm a part of the acquisitions team as well. So this year I went to Sundance and was helping to scout for films, and various members of the team will travel, or we're constantly kind of watching things or listening for films or interviews with new emerging talent that we think might be fitting for the label.
Interesting. And what are some of the things that are looked for to say this would be good in our library versus maybe not?
Yeah. So so we have the two labels: Music Box Films, international, prestige, art house. Doppelganger Releasing was created kind of the dark side of Music Box Films. It's more genre, more horror, but also like quirky, like screwball comedies. We released something last year called Heavier Trip, which is a sequel to Heavy Trip, which we had released, which is a Scandinavian like comedy with this heavy metal rock band, metal band called Impaled Rectum. Like just like really like silly, and it's a surprisingly really funny and heartwarming film.
Right.
So I think it's still, for me, like the connection there is that it's still quality cinema that we're curating and creating. The genre is just different, but to its core, it still feels like a Music Box release. There is heart there is community there, and I think on the other side of that, for Music Box Film, something we generally look for and what we succeed in is finding films that have strong community bases. Maybe they're either set regionally within the United States, and they're about a place or a type of person, or an underserved audience who isn't maybe seeing films about them on screen very often, or stories told that aren't being told every day. So we try to diversify what we acquire, and we want to be telling smart, artful stories, and curating the best of what we can find.
Absolutely. So it is interesting. So 2008, right? That's before a lot of things. And it is quite interesting as we take a look at kind of the market today in terms of films and consumption, right? So number one, streaming, right? There's kind of the conversation of streaming versus the theater. There was COVID. There was even across some of the major distribution platforms. There's been a big influx of foreign films kind of coming through those channels, and people are getting exposure. And curation has been a challenge, I think, on a lot of those. So to kind of identify this unique niche was identified, but back in 2008, it means to do distribution. What are some of the big changes in terms of meeting those objectives that you've seen?
I mean, theatrical is a whole different landscape from 2008, but also like just pre-pandemic, post-pandemic, whatever that means.
Yeah.
You know,
Yep.
I think things are constantly evolving in terms of how we feel we can access our audience, the type of marketing we do, the type of publicity, the publicity landscape as a whole.
Yep.
And then, you know, to your point, streaming physical goods. You mentioned, you know, a tape, VHS. You know,
Right.
obviously we're not selling VHSs anymore regularly. However, there are some films where we do like fun promotional products, and we'll have like, you know, vinyl releases because there's like a solid soundtrack. Or we had a film called Strawberry Mansion, which is it is really based in like physical media within the film as well. And there are a bunch of VHS tapes in the film, and so they had like a special run of VHS tapes. I have one. I've never played it. I don't know if I ever will play it, but it's gorgeous. It's really cool. It's like, it's, you know, it's a like a teal VHS, and it reminds me of when I had like a Nickelodeon VHS as a kid.
Sure.
And it was like orange, like a bright orange or something.
Right.
So it's like, I think there's like nostalgia in that's coming back, especially with like millennials and like a lot of you know, 90s trends that have like circled back in. So
Right.
it's really interesting because it's like, it's kind of like anything goes in terms of like marketing for the films, and tapping into nostalgia is ideal lately, because I think people are really missing.
Yep.
You know, sometimes people are missing physical things. So I don't know if that really answered your question, but it's like, you know, it's like there's just constant changes within the industry, but, you know, some good, some bad, but also some you can have fun with. So
yeah, it's interesting because the film and theatrical, it touches on a lot of the conversations that are happening just across the board as it relates to, you know, post-COVID, whatever that means. I love how you said that, because where are we in that? But it touches on a couple of other topics that I've seen in terms of experiential experience is probably not really a good phrase, but return to small, right, is kind of a thing that's starting to happen. You know, when everyone was at home and streaming couches, you know, there's thousands of people watching a thing. Curation is one of those things, but then also getting an actual experience too. And I think it's interesting to see how that is changing. So your role then within MusicBox, would love to know a little bit about kind of what that day-to-day is like. And I always like asking the question, where do you spend an extraordinary amount of time?
Unfortunately, Microsoft Outlook.
You're not alone. In email is a common answer.
Like, you know, to a child, I feel like if a child was like watching me work, they'd be like, "What are you doing? Just like, is your job email?" Because it kind of feels like it is sometimes, right? It's like, you know, lots of communication, and obviously that has evolved over the years as well. You know, it's like I'm no longer on the phone constantly with people. It's like a lot of email, and you know, I think in this like post-COVID world, also like connection, like in-person connection is like really, I know that we can Zoom and I know that we can like text and hop on the phone, but I found that something that I, you know, knew before but has really hit home after the pandemic is that the physically being in a location, experiencing movies together, experiencing something together, and having a shared you know, experience with a community is so important. So it's like, I think, you know, my day to day is, you know, mostly, you know, marketing and publicity, working with different agencies that we might hire, or putting together, you know, announcements for our films, strategy for our films and how we're going to release them, actively going through the release and the campaigns for films, but then also really trying to connect with people where I can in person. You know, publicity, most of that is the people you know and the connections that you have and how you can make things happen. And I think it's important for me to really understand who the other person is that I'm talking to,
Right.
how they like to be communicated to, what's the best time for me to get a pitch in front of them for our movie so that they can successfully review it, be interested at all, work it into their schedule. Like there's so many things that everyone else is like actively working on at the same time. So it's really having like building and nurturing a solid rapport with other people is like extremely important to what I do.
That's interesting. And I'd love to dive in a little bit even deeper to how publicity and marketing works in this genre. And I'll open by saying, my assumption is you're not creating big, massive commercials and buying time for Super Bowl ads and stuff like that, because I always think it's interesting marketing a product where part of the connection that the end consumer has is that sense of discovery, that sense of being in, which is at least the way that I view a lot of, independent films, independent anything is like, did you hear about this? Like I can't wait to walk around my neighborhood with this hat.
I love that.
And it looks like I'm in on the secret.
Yeah,
right?
Absolutely.
And it's always interesting then anyone who watches it, they're going to come tell me how they thought about it. Like I had nothing to do with the movie, but they always kind of associate that. So marketing and doing publicity and that sort of thing in this space, how would you compare that to some of the major media, or maybe what are some of the strategies that work?
Yeah, so I mean, for independent distribution, we're not your big budget studios that are behind productions and putting a lot of money into it in order to get the money out, putting together hundreds of $1,000s for an awards campaign or whatever it might be, right? We have to get creative. We have to start small. And as you mentioned, word of mouth is a huge part of that. It's also like maybe the most unknown part of that, because what we're trying to do is put together enough touch points in marketing, whether it be advertising digitally or flyering, or having your local art house movie theater send a newsletter with your film as the top banner, or on their social media, all these different touch points in order for a consumer to convert, to go see that movie, or to rent it or buy it digitally. So it's really trying to establish what type of marketing tactics and publicity tactics will work for a film. And I guess the exciting part of working in distribution, and especially having two labels, is that we have like some films have like a standard model of, okay, like this works before, this is a French international film with an auteur director. Okay, this is how we're probably going to market it, and it'll attend this film festival, and we think it'll be successful at these places, right? At these locations. But it's not the same for every single film. There's always something, at least one thing that's different that's an unknown, and you have to try to like solve or like put together these pieces to try to make it a successful campaign.
Right.
So it's interesting because we'll acquire a film and we have team brainstorms with the entire team, watch the movie together, and we'll discuss it, and we'll talk about, so publicity is like earned media. So how can we pitch the film to journalists so that they want to write about it? What is it within this film is going to hook them? Is it, a baseball journalist wants to write about baseball, so we're releasing it during spring training so that when they're talking about baseball and actively at spring training, but the games haven't really started yet, this is when they can talk about it and when they want to see it, right?
Yep.
Or is it, there's a film that we have coming up called Familiar Touch, which is a beautiful story about a woman, an aging woman who is transitioning into a senior living facility that she picked out. And it's really about her. It's a beautiful film about her rediscovering her identity. It sounds like it could be sad, but it's really not. I find it to be a very hopeful and beautiful film. And it's like, okay, so we're reaching out to maybe like some health publications, or organizations to help us work with anti-ageism campaigns or something along those lines. So it's like we really have to find ways to get creative, because we don't have a huge budget to buy TV ads. We're very rare. You're not going to see an EFIS billboard. You're not going to see us at the bus stops scrolling, on the
Yep.
LED screens or whatever it might be. That's not what we have in budget. It's a lot of grassroots. It's a lot of word of mouth. It's a lot of finding authentic ways to connect and break through with communities. So we have to start small. I always ask our team to think big, think as big as you can. Give me the most far-fetched thing. And
Can I hear one of the most far-fetched things you guys pulled off?
I'm trying to think. Let's see. We wanted to, for EFIS as an example, wouldn't it be cool if we could have the director throw out a pitch but working with Major League Sports or Major League Baseball or major sports is very expensive, but we found a way to get that to happen because we had the co-writer and one of the actors in the film at spring training and threw out a pitch at one of the games there, which promoted the film. And so it's I always say, let's think as big as we can and then find a way to make it work for us. So it's not going to be exact. We're not going to have Demi Moore on every red carpet with her little dog because we can't afford to style her, right?
Right.
Or her dog for that matter. But we can find a way to, okay, that's the model. That's what we're looking to go for. How can we pare that down so it's effective for us and it's within budget and within reason for us? We need to be able to. It has to be within reach.
Yep. Very interesting. So you mentioned Demi. I think you got it right.
I would say Demi. I think it's Demi.
I think that is Demi.
I think it's right.
We won't give her too much publicity, but it touches on another trend that I think consumers are starting to see, which is all the different streaming services, right? And there seems to be a model where if people can make a lot of attention on one, that then forces you to download or get a new streaming service and that sort of thing. And hope that not everyone does it just for the free trial and then cancels as soon as they watch the show. How is what you're doing play into any of that, or does it?
For sure. So we don't have a streaming platform that we own. We had something during the pandemic called Music Box Direct.
Yep.
Which
I knew that actually. Yeah.
Which no longer exists. Okay. We sunset that part of the business last year, which is fine. I think it made sense at the time, doesn't anymore. And I think we've seen a lot of other companies go through a transition like that as well. Mm-hmm. However, we do work directly with a lot of these different platforms. For instance, is it okay if I give you the life of a film, for instance?
I would love it.
Okay, so we acquire a film.
Yep.
We work with the filmmakers to see what their vision is, but then we also we're very collaborative in working with filmmakers, and we also have a loose release plans of what we think would be successful for the film. We try to marry that with what they think, what their vision is. I like to make sure that we're nurturing their art as well and their vision. Ultimately, this is their film, but we also need to do what we can do to sell the film. So we find, we collaborate on that. That looks like marketing materials, the creation of that, poster trailer, and then the overall campaign and strategy, how we're going to market the film, how we're going to publicize the film. That goes into the release plan. The release plan looks like the theatrical dates.
Okay.
Are we going to do a platform release? That means, do we start in just New York and LA and then expand? Or are we going to go wide? Are we going to try to get 100 screens at AMC's or whatever on the opening day? Yep. Determining what strategy we think works for us. Then there's windowing after that. So the windowing between theatrical and transactional. That's transactional is when the film is on digital for rent or purchase.
Okay.
So different windowing. Before the pandemic, I believe it was 90 days. Theaters always wanted 90 days before it went on transactional. Now it's really loose. It could be, sometimes we do 30 days, sometimes we do 60, sometimes we do 90, sometimes we do day and date. Where it's it's released theatrically and it's released on VOD transactionally at the same time. After transactional, it goes to potential streaming partners. So we're pitching to your Hulus or your movies, Netflix, Showtime, Paramount, anything where you like basically pay for a subscription. If it gets on one of those platforms, or like Amazon Prime or something, if it gets on one of those platforms, then that is like our streaming window. It'll be on that platform for a year, 2 years, whatever the contract, whatever the negotiation is.
Yep.
And then after that, there are other channels like AVOD, which is advertising, digital, like VOD. So it's like, I think Hulu could technically maybe be AVOD because there's advertisements in it.
Yeah.
Normally, I think that's technically it's like SVOD, but it's like a little gray.
And what are these acronyms? These
right?
SVOD and yeah.
AVOD is advertising VOD, video on demand.
Video on demand. Yep.
Yeah. So there's transactional, there's streaming, and then there's advertising. Advertising like Tubi. That's a big one that's up and coming. Love Tubi. They have ads, and then it's mostly, I think the platform is free.
Why do you love Tubi?
I think they just like have a bunch of random stuff on there, but it's like so fun because it's like sometimes you can't find something anywhere, but it's on Tubi.
I've noticed.
That's awesome. That's really cool. So I don't know, and again, it's like some of these platforms, we get very little information as to like what their goals are.
Mm-hmm.
I wish they were more transparent. They're also, as most people know in the industry, not transparent about numbers and like views and anything like that. We don't see a lot of reporting from them.
Yep.
So it's hard to, like, Netflix comes out with a new movie and it does really well on their platform, but it's like we don't know what that means half of the time, because there's not a lot of reporting from them. So
interesting.
Yeah, so it's hard to get like data there, but it's, at the end of the day, it's like, we know a lot of people are watching on those platforms. So trying to find the best home for our film after theatrical we have a home entertainment director who is constantly in communication with all these different platforms and trying to work with them to make sure we're finding a good home for our content, but also something that they're looking for. It's almost like publicity in that, when I'm pitching when I'm pitching a journalist to cover the film, I'm trying to get the right pitch, the right angle in front of them at the right time. On the home entertainment side, it's kind of the same way. You're trying to get the right film in front of them at the right time. What are they looking for right now? Is there something that they're trying to curate because they have some sort of like editorial initiative where they want to find movies that are this genre or have this type of story or this type of star, and maybe we have that in our catalog. So it's really a lot of it's a guessing game, but making sure that you have those relationships with people is important, because if they know who you are, they'll come to you and be like, hey, I'm looking for this, do you have this? So it's important to have a consistent rapport with our partners.
So interesting. So something you said is that not all of the distribution channels, the Netflix, et cetera, are providing reporting or data on that. That's interesting to me. So I guess my question will be is, how do you measure success with a film?
So I guess success is a moving target depending on the film. Again, it's another thing that changes, right? About the film. It's like we have different expectations for different films. We have different expectations based off of where it premiered, what festival it came from, or if there are stars in it, or if there are not, if it's an international film, if it's so there are different aspects of the film itself that will inform the goals and the trajectory, I think.
Sure.
And in terms of like on the home entertainment side, I guess success for us is like making sure we have a solid partner who is willing to work and promote the film as well. We can use Hulu as an example. A film that we released last year called In the Summers. We acquired it from Sundance, out of Sundance. It is now on Hulu. And I guess a success there would be the partnership with them, the amount of promotion that they're able to do, knowing that it's a good film for their platform and their audience. I have no idea how it's performing because they don't give us that information. I wish they did, because at the end of the day, it would be just good for us to know if, we think it's the right fit for their audience, but like, is it performing?
Right.
If it is, then we know, then we're right. And we on both parties made a good decision here, right? We made a good deal. But then also, I guess, at, bottom line, are you making money from this, right?
That's what I was going to ask. If this goes into, contracts that aren't super obvious or anything, I'm sorry, contracts that shouldn't be discussed on a podcast, we don't have to go that deep. But I was always curious, knowing a little bit about the music industry and, Spotify, oh my gosh, you must have tons of money. You're getting all these plays. Like, no, I get about a penny per thing. How does that work? So with not having the analytics, are you selling the film for a placement or a period of time, or?
Yeah, it's negotiated. Every platform has a different way of negotiating. A lot of like streaming's flat fee.
Okay.
So it's negotiated by the time that it's on that platform for X amount of money. And then in terms of theatrical, there's usually a percentage, like that comes out from the box office that's split between the theater and the distributor. So it's like, you see the box office gross, and you see, oh, this movie made all that money, but like, all that money is not going directly to the distributor. It's also not going directly to the theater, and it's not going to the people who made the movie until it's recouped on the distributor side. Gotcha. So it's like that. Then we pay out royalties, but generally, there's a money up front that goes to the artists or the filmmakers. I went to school initially for like music business. That's what I thought I was going to do. And then I ended up in film, which is great, still entertainment, which is, where I wanted to be. But there's so many similarities between how, like artists get paid in music and film, but also a lot of differences about how that works as well. Like, I don't think that streaming for film for distributors is the same way that it happens for musicians. But again, for musicians, there's like, you're paying the publisher, you're paying, you're paying for the masters, so you're paying the label. And here it's, the kind of breakdown is, okay, you're paying the theater, or the streamer is taking a cut, and then you're paying the distributor, and then royalties eventually get paid out to the artists themselves. So it's similar in that way, but I think from what I understand, it sounds like the music industry is, artists don't get paid what they should.
Sure.
Just bottom line.
Yeah. And there seems to also, I would suspect that part of that is probably because the volume is so much more.
Yeah.
Meaning, what it takes to put a song on Spotify versus putting a film together, right? The kind of means of production is a little bit different. Yeah. And probably that's why it's, I don't know, just hypothetically.
For sure, yeah.
Cool. So in this industry, I love kind of thinking behind the scenes because I'm a consumer. For instance, I just learned, I've watched films from here or distributed through you on Hulu and YouTube, and then directly for that time being, right? I was not aware that you also syndicated on things like Netflix and stuff like this. Like, I just never really thought of it because I'm a consumer of film. I'm not in the business. What do you think is a common misconception about this business that most consumers have?
That's a good question. I mean, I think that a part of what I talked about is like how the breakdown is, like what actually goes to the filmmaker or what the collaboration or working with the filmmaker looks like. I think it's different for every distributor. There are some, when you're smaller like we are and more independent, that you have more of the ability to work closely with filmmakers. Whereas like when you're like a bigger studio, you kind of control it all. Yeah. And you, unless you're a huge filmmaker and you're like, no, this is my film and this is how it's going to be, you don't really have a ton of say in what that campaign looks like. Yeah. And honestly, they might not want to have a say at that point in their career, right? They might be like, I made my movie, here you go, do what you got to do with it.
Yep.
So I think it's just like the collaboration, the behind the scenes of like what that process looks like. I also think maybe like boiling it down, not even industry related, like something that, you know, we're maybe getting more granular into like our business, Music Box Films, and like Chicago based, is that I don't think people realize still that there's like Music Box Films and Music Box Theater.
Right.
There's like a separation. Like the theater, obviously people have been there. That's very consumer facing, and it's you are physically in the space when you are at the Music Box Theater. And Music Box Films, it's the other side of this, the distribution side, which is like we are bringing the content to that physical space. Right. So there's still that degree of separation that people don't necessarily understand about like our companies. Like we are sister companies and very much connected, right? But I think that's because people don't think about distribution really. Like I think that's like distribution for consumers generally kind of is an unknown. Right. I don't think that the general population knows what distributors actually do. So I think in that's, I mean, I don't know if I answered your question, but
yeah, no, you did.
Okay.
And I you made me think of another question. I have a specific question I'm curious on. Trailers.
Oh, okay.
Is that something that the director of the film decides what needs it, or is that played, because it ties in so much to how well the film's going to be adapted and distributed? Is that something that you play a role in, or is that something?
Sure. Yeah. So a lot of times when we acquire a film, there isn't a poster or like a theatrical poster or trailer made yet. Sometimes they have teasers for festivals. Sometimes they have like a festival poster. But generally, we are starting the campaign after distribution. We're putting together the release plan, and that also is working. You know, we have a creative director who I work very closely with, and we put together the marketing materials that will inform the marketing campaign.
Gotcha.
So the trailer, sometimes the filmmakers will put something together. Sometimes they want to make it, and we'll collaborate with them if it feels like a good fit. A lot of times we just hire like a trailer cutting firm. We work with a few very closely who do an incredible job. They start from scratch. We offer notes, and then we go through various like iterations of these trailers until we put together something that we feel is the direction, the tone, the language to move forward on with the campaign. So it's like sometimes filmmakers are like, I already cut a trailer, I really love it, and we see it and we're like, and we also really love it. Or we're like, well, we actually need to make some changes. This is why. And most of the time they're like, okay, we understand that. We'll make those changes. And so it's a collaborative effort. And then there's other times where we just like take, the filmmaker's not really involved, and we do whatever we need to do. We send it their way just for a thumbs up, and then move forward with the campaign.
Interesting. So, and it might tie into this, but when you identify a film that you think is great for Music Box Films,
yes,
I would imagine there's a process of contacting that film, that director, etc. And are there differentiators that you're pitching in that process? Why go with us versus other distribution? Or is everyone just excited that someone's talking to them? Would love to know a little bit about that process.
So, it all different, types of conversations where, sometimes you have conversations and you're like, this is a really good fit. Like the way they envision and they talk about their film is very similar to how we are talking about the film and how we envision this rollout and this release plan. Sometimes we're talking to people and they have very large expectations for a very small independent film. And we know, that's maybe not the right fit for us. Because we try, do our best to manage those expectations, but we're small and independent. We have, we don't have a huge budget to promote the film. So if they're looking for something that is above and beyond our reach, probably not a good fit for us.
Yeah. What would you say you're known for in that community?
I think we're known for being very collaborative.
Okay.
I've said that a lot, but we truly are. Ethos is a really good example. I think that we've worked so closely with the filmmakers and the director Carson. I was talking to him in New York for the opening, and we were just talking about the release and just who, like, what type of person he is. And he was just like, I don't think I'd be able to work with a distributor who isn't collaborative or was going to try to control the entire thing. Like, we, even if they came back and they were like, oh, we would really like something this way, and we're like, sorry, that's not going to work, and we explained to them why, it was collaborative, and that they were like, okay, you're right, you know best, like, we're not going to push back on that, we trust you. So there was a really good level of trust between us, but then also finding ways to make sure that we're both happy on social media assets. They worked a lot on those. Their team, they are, the filmmakers are a part of a collective called Omnis Collective, and it's a bunch of filmmakers and other creatives. So they already have like a core group that's passionate and understands the film and has, they're really talented and have a good eye. So they were able to collaborate on assets for us, put some stuff together. We would put stuff together, pass it to them for notes, and it was collaborative in a way that I think is maybe unusual. And of course, doesn't need to be like that always. It's sometimes best if it's not like that. But in this case, it worked really well I think for both sides. We're very happy with how the campaign is looking, and I can't speak for them, but I would hope that they are also happy with the collaboration.
Yep. Do you think within those groups and different filmmakers and stuff like that, in my world, there are some clients that will work with me because we're the people who did that.
Yeah.
Right. And I was just curious. I know back in the day, at risk of talking to Led Zeppelin and saying "Stairway to Heaven" to them in a meeting.
Yeah.
When I first came across Music Box Films in particular, it was Back in the Day and Girl with the Dragon Tattoo. Yes. You knew I was going to say that, didn't you?
It was either that or Ida.
Or yeah, that's right. Yeah. So I'm just curious how much that, we don't have to focus on that, but a particular release or something impacts kind of your overall brand and how you look at that and how that impacts things.
I mean, I think it's instrumental. I did not work for Music Box Films at the time.
Is that your Stairway to Heaven by chance?
No.
We've done so many things since then.
No. It's
great film.
Fantastic film. Solid films. I did not work for Music Box at the time, but from like everything I've heard, what I understand, it was just like really early success too for the company, having curating and having a really good eye for incredible international films. And that's a great foundation for the company, and like we haven't strayed from that. We still talk about those films and those releases from early on in the company when we're pitching ourselves to filmmakers or trying to work on a film. I think most recently it's like we will mention those films, but it's a lot of also like current releases or something that is relatable. When pitching ourselves for American indies, we talk a lot about some of our Sundance releases. We had one called Fremont that did extremely well. And so we'll talk a lot about that. Strawberry Mansion, which I mentioned. We, for international films, we'll mention like we've worked with like Ozon and just like other, Pablo Larraín and other like, well-known and established directors. So we definitely have films in our catalog that we can point to. The Unknown Country with Lily Gladstone, those are big names. And really solid releases, so they can like review those release plans and talk to those producers and say, hey, how was your experience like working with Music Box? How was your experience with the release? Were you happy? And I mean, of course, we have the rights to the film still for most of these, so it's like we're still working very closely with these filmmakers. But definitely, like we're always pointing back to our early successes, but also like our current successes, and like Independent Spirit Award nominations and wins, and so it's good. And post pandemic, we released Writing with Fire, which was a documentary, and it was nominated against Summer of Soul, but it was nominated for an Academy Award, which is something that we can speak to and point
That's
to.
incredible.
So, yeah.
Incredible. So in our conversation, we've talked about kind of some of the journeys of life of film. We've talked about festivals being a big part of it, and awards and stuff like that. Mentioned Sundance, mentioned Cannes, mentioned New York's come up. We're sitting in Chicago.
Yes.
How would you say the Chicago community plays into music box films or music box in general?
Absolutely. I mean,
are we cool too? Is Chicago cool in the
Chicago
films?
is cool.
Okay.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, so a few answers there. The Music Box Theater is such a Chicago staple.
100%.
It's an integral part of the city and in the community, especially in Lakeview, down Southport. Like people out of the country know what the Music Box Theater is. Like this is an established and historic place in the city of Chicago and in the country. So there's that, right? And that's like the foundation of our company as well, Music Box Films. So it's natural that we're here. I mean, I do travel a lot, to New York or wherever it may be. And a lot of us do for film festivals, but also for like our premieres, because I mean, maybe a misconception is that, okay, we're Chicago based, so we only open in Chicago, but that's not true. We acquire films like any other distributor, like your Neons, your A24s, like any other studio would, and we release it within the United States domestically, also sometimes full North American rights in Canada as well. So we're playing in New York, we're playing in the major art house, movie theaters there. And so, it is, I think what Chicago does for us though, as a distributor, is we're the only distributor that's like Midwest based, really. Like I think everyone else is New York or LA. And I don't think that's a negative in any way. It doesn't play like there's nothing that we can't do or be a part of. Travel is very easy, luckily. So it's there's nothing that we can't engage with. But I think what it does do for us is help us better understand some of these like small regional stories and communities in a different way. We relate with them differently. And I think we find a lot of success in those types of films as well. So when we're pitching ourselves about, these, these local community-based like films and stories, it helps because we're community based, we're very community oriented, we're from the Midwest. Like that is something that we very deeply understand and are rooted in.
That's it's interesting you say it, because that comes up a lot in other businesses I'm talking with that are doing things either nationally or internationally. Is Midwest means something to us, obviously, but it also means something to people outside of the Midwest. And to hear some of the, I guess, competitive advantages that you've experienced on being very collaborative, right? That's a characteristic that comes up. And then the other one that comes up too is the Chicago grit. Right. And I wonder if that kind of plays into it too, like the hard work ethic.
Maybe we should play harder into that. I like that. I haven't thought much about Chicago grit, so that's a good one. I'm gonna write that down next time in my next pitch meeting. I'm gonna be like, we have Chicago grit.
There we go. Maybe that we'll save that for the doppelganger.
That's exactly where it would play. That's great.
That's awesome. So some of the other trends that again, kind of as a consumer, I will see, right? So we're seeing kind of an influx of foreign films, even on some of the major platforms and that sort of stuff. It used to be you had to know about a music box theater or music box films to get that kind of content. And now it's becoming a little bit more mainstream accepted. Do you see that as being beneficial to what you're doing, or competitive to what you're doing? Maybe a little bit of both, or how's that played into your world?
I think it's I find that it's maybe mostly positive, because people are looking for it. It's something that people want. We just need to find out how to get it to them, right?
Yep.
But it also is kind of like sometimes you want to be in on the secret. You want to be in on the thing that isn't like hasn't exploded yet.
Yeah.
And so I think there's, for us, because we are smaller, more independent, and that's how we operate. It kind of works for us. So I don't know if that clearly answers your question.
Yeah, I mean, so for sure does. What I remember back in high school, there would be a band that I really liked until they got popular. I was that guy, or that person, I should say.
Sure.
And so you've been doing something that's been so unique, and delivering films that for a very long time were not super accessible, right? And that was also a little bit of the charm to it. And when you see something like that culturally start becoming more acceptable, more interesting, sometimes it's exciting for the pioneers because they're like, we were right? And then someone comes in and does it wrong and takes advantage of this. Like you kind of see some of that. So I was just curious if that is it sounds like it's a positive. I think
so. It is a positive, but then, I guess on the other side of that for us specifically is we have, we're talking about like we have big studios.
Mm-hmm.
We have like mini major studios. We have like independent distributors with like a big budgets, big backings.
Yep.
And then we have your like small art house, Chicago grit independent studios, right?
Yeah.
Which we would fall under. We're definitely smaller than some of the big budget indie studios, right? And I think the hard thing is, I think in this, yes, I love the films that we acquire and what we curate and the audience that we are serving and the communities that we are trying to get films, acquire these films and these stories for.
Yep.
The hard thing there is we have budgets for these films, but then having the budget for your brand as a whole and establishing that.
Yeah.
And it's so that is, I think, maybe the negative there is putting a lot of the time, effort, and the budget that we have into those films, which isn't a bad thing because at the end of the day, those films elevate the brand. It comes back to it, right?
Right.
But if you see you see a lot of other studios who are like, paying a ton of money to sponsor, for a sponsorship at big events for their brand, their logo, their company to be front and center.
Yeah.
Not something that we can necessarily do, especially when we're putting most of our energy and budget into the films that we acquire and we're trying to release.
Well, I mean, in my own opinion, of course, not knowing all the financials of everything, when you're dealing with a niche product like that, I think it's pretty cool that your energy is going into effectively your client.
Absolutely.
Right. And, again, I'll keep putting myself in the consumer side of it.
Yeah.
That's also more interesting to me as a consumer because I can trust the content.
Yeah.
Because I know that your brand is dependent upon it, is built on it. So, and I hear this a lot with talking to a lot of businesses, the more that the focus is the end product that they're doing for their client, ends up becoming their branding, right? And it's kind of this nice cycle.
Yeah.
But what I'm also hearing is another symptom that I hear is, the shoemaker's kid, right? We're putting all our energy in to promoting this.
For sure.
Who's going to promote us? But it works.
Absolutely. I mean, it's worked for us. I think that, people recognize the quality films that we release. They recognize, how the work we put into it and the, what we've curated and we've built, for various audiences and movie and film, film goers, movie watchers, whatever, however, they want to identify themselves. But at the end of the day too, I think it's like people are easily blinded by the stars, and
Yep.
and they're easily so flashy and splashy stuff, you know, always does like still resonates with a lot of people.
Yep.
And so it's like maybe, you know, yes, we have like a niche audience of people who are really interested in the hard work and the community building, but then there's also probably more consumers that, well, I'm not going to trust this unless I see, you know, this brand doing X, Y, and Z. And in order for that brand to do those things, they need to spend a lot of money to do those things.
Right.
So there is like, you know, I guess the other side of that is, and that maybe that audience isn't for us. Maybe that audience isn't for what we're doing necessarily. Yep. But there is a lot of crossover. You know, a lot of people watch movies, like
right.
almost everyone probably, you know. So if anyone can, you know, listen to a film or watch a film or experience something, you know, experience any type of art, you know, I think they could be interested in you know, what we distribute.
Right.
There's something, you know, I would hope that we have something in our catalog that would appeal to everyone at some point.
Yep.
But I do think that people they still look for something that's already established in
Yep.
some way. Not that we're not, but sometimes it's just much easier for someone with a company with a larger budget to get in front
yep.
of more people based off of how much money they're willing to spend.
Right. So something you mentioned there too. So you're speaking of something for everyone. We'd like to think, but maybe not. And then we've also talked about the fact that your films, the curation of your films, is also kind of representative of your overarching brand.
Yeah.
I'm guessing you get asked this question a lot, but I'm going to ask it anyway, and it's probably a challenging one. If there were a couple of titles that or I should say this, are there titles that you would often recommend for people to say, I get it. This is what I can expect. Are there good starters, good entry points, or
absolutely
anything comes to mind?
So I think, I mean, Ida is a classic and an incredible film that people should absolutely watch. If they haven't seen it, Ida is the one.
Yeah.
I think, let's see. So you saw the front of our building, which are the glass windows have a bunch of our, you know, I think solid films from our catalog that people should absolutely watch.
Yep.
Deep Blue Sea's on there, a film called Transit's on there. We have Fremont on there. There's something from, let's see, Leonore Will Never Die.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe not a film that a lot of people have seen. It's a filmmaker from the Philippines.
Okay.
Extremely charming, lovely film, genre elements. So I think there's a handful of those that I would say that is like a good diverse, you know, platter of what makes, you know, up music box films. And then, you know, our genre label, we have, you know, I mentioned like Heavier Trip. We're starting to acquire just like more films generally on that label. Mm-hmm. Breaking Surface is one that performs really well for us. In terms of, I'm going to go bounce back and forth.
Yeah, no, that's great.
Music box films. There's A Man Called Uwe.
Yes, I've seen that.
Which has been remade now with Tom Hanks. A Man Called Otto, which was like 2 years ago, I think it was remade.
That is funny because I had seen A Man Named Uwe, and then I saw that come up, and I was like, "Is this the?" And I thought I had something. It was like your address. I'm like, I understood it this way.
Yeah. But,
right. Okay.
Yeah. It's a remake. There are films that, you know, and then there were remakes of Dragon Tattoo.
Sure.
So the trilogy. So we, you know, I think I named a handful, but there are some, you know, standout films, and even the, you know, our catalog, the last 2-3 years of films that we've acquired, I think are very well rounded.
Yeah.
You know, I talk about communities and like underserved audiences, but I think we also have, an audience for like aging adults and like older individuals too, mm-hmm. who maybe, you know, I think there are a lot of older people who generally like international films and art house films, mm-hmm. but since the pandemic, probably aren't going to the movie theater as often and
Sure.
want to see things at home and stream things. So we have films in our catalog for, about older individuals or aging individuals that are, would appeal to them directly, stories for them and about them so that they can see themselves on screen. Like, I think we are trying to
That's
curate.
interesting.
Yeah.
That's a cool, you don't hear a lot of people targeting that demographic.
Yeah.
It's very interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting. So you just gave me a lot of titles.
Yeah, I did. Sorry.
I always like, I don't know, it's a characteristic of myself. I always like knowing the group within the group. And in this case, is there a film here that is like a secret favorite, but it's not, maybe it didn't do as well in some of the promotions, but man, it's awesome. And I wish everyone saw this.
I mean, for me personally,
yeah, let's go there. Yeah.
I love this film that we acquired called Please Baby Please.
Okay.
The director is Amanda Kramer. She also just had a film released or premiered this year at Sundance Film Festival called By Design. And everyone there knew it as like the film about a chair because it, like, the log line was so sorry, I touched the mic. The log line was so silly. It was like a woman turns into a designer chair and everyone likes her better as a chair. And it was known as like the body swap movie with a chair. Anyway, so that's the most recent release. That's it, right? So Please Baby Please is very similar to, Amanda Kramer's work is very artful, surreal, and it's just very interesting.
Yeah.
And Demi Moore is actually in Please Baby Please.
Okay.
Everyone talks about Demi and The Substance, but I like to think that we actually brought her back because this was a 2022 release of ours. And this was like kind of she had made a cameo in this film, Demi, and I treat this as her entry back into entertainment, coming back into the industry. So
that was her Travolta's Pulp Fiction.
Yeah. She's back. She's and it was Please Baby Please that did it. So anyways,
awesome.
I love the film. It's very, it's not for everyone.
Yeah.
But I also
like it even more now.
Yeah, right. I also respect that. Like, a director who believes in their art and what their voice is, what their tone is, and they stick to that. Like, they could go more commercial.
Yeah.
But they're like, nope, this is what I like to do, and I'm gonna do it. And I respect that. So Please Baby Please is one that I love, that I would recommend.
Yeah.
And then I mentioned Leonore Will Never Die, an extremely charming film, an international film. Wasn't like a huge box office success, but premiered at Sundance as well, played at Toronto International and other like genre festivals, Fantastic Fest, a fantastic film. Those are a couple favorites of mine.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So, Conrad, I've learned so much about your industry and your business here. So your role is really, while you said publicity and marketing, that's also kind of the product that Music Box Films does in general. So you're very involved with a lot of things, see many aspects of the company. A question I like to ask, and you also specifically mentioned working with limited budgets and things like that.
Yeah.
If the owner of the company or whoever came in and said, hey, guess what? We've got an extra $5 million for you. What would you invest that in?
I would say, here's my bank information, here's my routing number.
That is always the first response, by the way.
What would I invest in? Okay, I guess if money was never an issue and we could just invest in anything. We work a lot with like auteur directors, but personally, one of my favorite things to do is work with emerging talent. I like to discover new directors, maybe new actors who are up and coming in their career, on the cusp of like greatness. And I just like genuinely believe in like their product and their art. That's something that I would, I think we do a really great job of investing in new talent and emerging talent, and new filmmakers. We have a lot of filmmakers, we release a lot of films where it's their first feature.
Yeah.
And that's, a big investment in
Yep.
someone. So I would just do more of that. I think we have a balanced slate where it's not only, new and emerging talent, but that for me, that's what's most exciting, because it's like, we released a Sean Baker film years ago called Starlet, and like, he just won an Academy Award. He won like 4 or 5 Academy Awards actually. So like, you know what I mean? So it's like, we Justine Triet, we released a film called Sybil, and she won the Academy Award for Anatomy of a Fall last year. So I think we have absolutely successfully invested in talent previously. I would love to do that more. Like, I would, if that was only our brand, I would love that. I don't think it necessarily makes sense.
It's hard to run a business on just that.
Exactly. And but for me, that's always what I find most exciting. That's what I really love to do.
Yeah.
Because it's you're able to work with someone and experience something new with them sometimes. They're always very excited, eager. And it's always, I don't know, it's just, that's what I love most about like what I personally do within my role at Music Box.
I love it. And I ask that question a lot in these interviews, and it is interesting because the first question or the first response is usually something about I'd retire, or I'd, here's my banking.
Yeah.
But then ultimately what comes out is it's what the individual or the organization is passionate about.
Yeah.
And, to hear you say, discovering new people, bringing people out for the first time, right? Like, that's what I want a film distributor to be interested and focused on. And so it's really cool because you hear kind of the passion that's behind that individual and or the organization. So it sounds like we have the right person for the job.
I hope so. I'm here anyway, so.
In the role, it's super exciting. So cool. Kind of as we wrap things up here, best way for people to discover some of these films you've talked about. Am I searching online? Am I going to the website?
For sure.
Am I going onto my streaming?
I would say first and foremost, whether you're in Chicago or whether you're in another part of the country, I try to find your local art house theater. Here in Chicago, the Music Box Theater, the Davis Theater, the Gene Siskel downtown, really great independent theaters where you can see a lot of art house films, some films without distribution. The Music Box Theater plays films with, just filmmakers want to show their film and we'll show it. So I think seeking out your local independent art house theater, finding how you can support, go see films, go challenge yourself and see something that you might not know of, or you might never have heard of before, or something you don't know if you like. So that's first and foremost. That's not really related to Music Box films directly, but I think it's like worth investing your time in. In terms of Music Box films, you can find us at musicboxfilms.com. We have our full collection on our website, our catalog. It'll tell you where you can watch the films as well, on each individual film page. There are small companies, streaming companies like Mubi. They also have like a Movie Goat subscription where you can not only do you watch films on their platform, they invest in independent filmmakers and distributors. They stream a lot of independent films on their subscription platform, but also they have a service in various cities where it's kind of like it's like the Movie Pass used to be almost.
Sure.
It's like,
yeah.
But they curate a film a week, and with that pass you can go to whatever theater is a participating theater and see that movie for free, so or at a discount, so you're really finding the companies, the subscription platforms, the theaters locally that support art house and independent filmmakers and cinema.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And it's also very telling your response that you immediately went to the entire community of people producing art and producing films.
Yeah.
And And I think that's right, because it takes once you get a taste for it and find out if this is for me or not, it kind of lifts all tides on the industry. Where else can I get it? Right.
For sure, absolutely.
And that's very awesome. Awesome. Well, I really appreciate the time today.
Yeah,
this is exciting. I've been taking notes, and I'm going to listen back and write down all the titles that you just listed. Yes, some we're aware of, and
a lot.
Some I can't wait to check out. Yeah. Awesome. Cool.
Thank you so much.
That's all we got.